going to hear often, because Congress is so partisan now, different viewpoints from the Democrats and Republicans, possibly looking at the exact same numbers and the exact same information and trying to decide what happened there. Was it nefarious or not?
On Blue Ribbon Commissions, historically, have they been successful?
Well, you have some very successful ones, and then you have a lot that people sort of interpret as designed more to sort of kick the can down the road and just sort of allow a president to express interest in an issue and maybe nothing comes of it. But then you have, the investigations by Blue Ribbon style commissions of not just 9/11, but Pearl Harbor. The Shuttle Challenger disaster is one that I think is usually considered to have been done very well. So there have been some very significant, memorable ones, and then there are some that aren't very memorable.
Medic DJ99 tweets in, how is it possible that Holder can investigate himself? He was convicted of contempt of Congress in Fast and Furious investigation. Deborah, Bethesda, Maryland, Democratic caller. Go ahead, Deborah.
Yes, hello. I'm a lawyer that practices in the exempt organizations area, and I don't know a single person in that category that believes that this IRS follow-up was anything other than what the Inspector General said it was, which was an administrative screw-up of some kind that was exacerbated perhaps by a lack of guidance from Washington. And yet the press, which is just getting to that point now, that example being the Josh Hicks story on page 3 of the Washington Post that was just cited, when, last week or the week before they put on page 1 that somebody's saying this whole thing was directed from Washington. I really wish the press would, the term investigative reporting implies investigation before reporting and not simply acting as a stenographer whenever anybody says anything.
Yeah, it's interesting, Deborah, because that headline that you remember was from the Washington Times. The Washington Times getting a hold of transcripts from the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee of interviews that they had done with staffers in Washington, and the headline was, okay, people in Washington knew. And then the headline in Josh Hicks' piece in the Washington Post is that this was initiated by an official in Cincinnati, that coming from the Democrat.
Yes, but I really wish that, my point is I really hope that you press to have the full transcripts released.
Oh, definitely.
That brings up a question for our topic here. I mean, is that something that House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, they're doing their own investigation of the IRS. Will they release all the information to the public that they have received?
Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, I think that everybody wants to see the full transcript. It's not helpful to just have partial quotes from that.
Is that something that reporters ask for?
Oh, yes. Yes, we've been asking for that.
You have been asking, reporters have been asking the committee for that?
Oh, yes.
And what have been the answers so far?
Well, so far, no. I think that Representative Cummings said he would get that released eventually if the Republicans did not. But it's something we'll keep seeking, and all that should be public. I mean, they're doing investigations in the public's name.
And the headlines yesterday were that Elijah Cummings, the Democrat of Maryland, the ranking Democrat, said he will release the transcripts if Chairman Issa does not. Deborah, you're still on the line. What do you think?
I think the transcripts should definitely be released. I think that they will show what every lawyer who practices in this area has known for a long time, that there is no scandal here. At worst, it was some administrative, I won't even say incompetence, simply shortcutting. And, I really think the press has fallen down on this story. They just repeat any sensationalist claim that comes along, and they should not be doing that. They should be looking into it. There's no reason that you, for example, could not have interviewed those same Cincinnati employees. I'm sure you can find them. And why wait for the committee to do that?
Okay. All right. Brad in Chicago, independent caller.
Hi. I just have a couple comments. I'll go back to the last caller. The IRS admitted the wrongdoing already in that press conference with the planted question. So that was just one thing. So this whole left-wing mantra that it was just some oversight of some bad administration is just really ridiculous. And also the depositions that they're taking behind closed doors, you really don't want those public until all the depositions are taken because you don't want to influence other witnesses down the line. And my question for your guest is, what does she think about a special counsel who does most of his work, let's say behind closed doors, versus the congressional hearings, which would do them out in the open?
Well, I think there's always a tension there, because if you do think that the law was broken, for example, by some of these IRS employees, then a special counsel is might be the right place to go. But they're going to have a grand jury. They're going to bring people in. It's all going to be very secret until the investigation is over. And sometimes this takes years. So it slows down what the public learns. If you've got the congressional hearings, the public is hearing it as it unfolds. As you said, they may want to hold back some interviews for a while, but eventually, usually these congressional hearings are designed to put things out there before the public and let people know what's going on. So there's pressure for both, and you see things like Iran-Contra where there were both, where you had the hearings and you had the special prosecutor, independent counsel at that time. And it did cause some problems. I mean, they ended up, Oliver North and John Poindexter's convictions were overturned because of the testimony that they had given publicly under partial immunity on the Hill. So there is a question, do you want it done, kept quiet, done by a special prosecutor? And that might lead to, in the end, a more thorough investigation and criminal convictions. Or do you want it done on the Hill where it's done publicly and people can really see what's going on? And also you're going to get a lot more attention that way because you might have televised hearings. It just gets the public involved in a different way.
And those are two of the 4 ways that Connie Cass writes about in how Washington investigates itself. It was part of the Washington Express cover story recently. They take the U.S. to task. Washington never stops investigating itself. Inspector generals, special counsels, blue ribbon commissions, and of course, the role of Congress itself. The last caller was asking, why couldn't we, the media, interview Cincinnati employees, those that have testified publicly and in depositions before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Talk about reporters trying to do that. Are attempts made to interview these folks, and what's the response?
All the time. Well, I mean, I haven't dealt with that story specifically myself, but the Inspector General.
Or in file clerk says, so the IG writes a report, no one has to follow up on their findings? Is that correct?
Well, their reports are sent to the head of the agency and to Congress.
I know. That's what he left me with.
There are often follow-up reports. Sometimes they have recommendations. Sometimes the IGs actually can arrest people too. So sometimes there are arrests and they lead to prosecutions. Their recommendations are not always acted on. I mean, Congress is the watchdog there to ensure that the agency acts on those recommendations if they feel that they are correct.